Hi guys. While TikTok is booting, I am going to let you know that today I'm live on my TikTok, my YouTube, and also Joey Contino's TikTok because Joey is on a cruise, and he had asked me and Masha from Kyiv Independent on my recommendation to kind of like keep his audience up with the news. So I'm going to have to introduce myself because the people on Joey's account have zero clue who the hell I am. Hi, my name is Yulia. I'm Ukrainian. I've lived in New York for 13 years, and I have recently, 3 months ago, moved back to Ukraine. I'm from Lviv originally. I moved to the US when I was 16. So, my parents have always been here, so I was the only person in my family who lived abroad, and now I am just like the rest of my family living in Ukraine. I used to be a creative director in New York City, and I worked a UX UI job for a startup. And then when the full scale invasion started, I somehow started posting. Well, not somehow, it's a long story, so I'm not going to get into details. But I posted a couple of videos explaining the geopolitical and historical events surrounding Ukraine and why things are not. And why things are not, are not going to be figured out by, negotiating with Russia and stuff like that. And that basically took off. And then eventually, I quit my job and I started doing this full time. I work with United 24. You might have heard my voice in the segment called Ukraine Briefly. Now it's actually called World Briefly because we don't only cover Ukraine, but it started with Ukraine Briefly. But we cover events worldwide that pertain to Ukraine. Actually, at some point today, I'm going to be showing you one of the newest videos that we recently created because it's very interesting. So I also worked with Svidomi News, Svidomi Media. I had a brief sabbatical at Kyiv Post and quit that for moral principles that did not align with Kyiv Post's principles. And right now I'm working on creating a new video-based English-facing, or rather English-speaking facing Ukrainian media from scratch that will hopefully create more of a bridge between us in Ukraine and everyone in the West, hoping to get more information about Ukraine. Are you Ukrainian? Yes, born and raised. So that's me. And for those of you who are just joining Joey's account, he's on a vacation and I'm going to be substituting for him. I do lives every evening on my YouTube and on my TikTok. And so I figured that since I have access to Joey's account with his permission for the next 7 days, whenever I do lives, I will also be doing them. I will also be doing them on this account as well. There are trolls in here in my account, which is right to the right of me or of you, and I'm going to quickly respond to them in a second. No, I'm not dating Joey. Joey's married very happily to a beautiful Ukrainian woman named Julia. Well, actually Yulia, but she translates her name to Julia. So just like my name, but no, not that Julia. Wow, how you speak perfect English then? Так само, як я перфекційно, чи перфектно, чи охеренно, чи як хочеш розмовляю українською мовою. Ха-ха, сюрприз. Anyways, so for all of those people who are familiar with me, sorry for the excursus into my, resume basically. But but I just had to explain who the hell I am to the people who are watching me and are like, this is not Joey. But I hope I give off Joey energy. I feel like, we we get along that way. We're both pretty loud and we both talk quite a bit. So I hope that, this is going to be quite Joey-like for you. Hi, Holobus. But yeah, so well, sadly you can brag about speaking fluent Lithuanian. No, I actually fuck up Lithuanian politician names all the time, and one of my moderators, Taz, who's Lithuanian, makes sure to let me know each time I do it. Also, someone was asking me if I sorted my hair dryer situation that I drowned the other day accidentally in a bucket of water because, we mop here in we mop here in Ukraine quite frequently. No, I have not. It is not quite in the budget for this month. Uh, okay. Do you think people of New York would act the same as those in Ukraine in the same if in the same position? That's actually a very interesting question. I have never been asked before. I don't know. The thing is that actually, you know what? I don't think so. Because here's the thing, the reason why Ukrainians act the way that Ukrainians act is because we're very cohesive, right? First of all, we have, are you in Ukraine or the US? No, I'm in Ukraine. I used to live in the US up until 3 months ago. I still kind of sort of, you know what? It's a very complicated situation. You know, it is a little bit deeper of a question than you might have anticipated. So, no, I don't think that people in New York would have acted the same way had they been in the same position as Ukrainians were on the day of the full scale invasion, because in Ukraine, we're all very cohesive. And the thing is that, like, our society is so used to generationally being invaded and having to protect ourselves and stand up for ourselves that it's kind of like, it's a cheesy thing to say, but it is in our blood to fight for our independence and to fight for our freedom and to just fight for our ability to express ourselves as Ukrainians, right? Um, New York is a very multicultural, multinational state. And a lot of people in New York have the ability to just flee to wherever they're from or to a different country if danger arises. And I do believe that a lot of people would do that. Also, like, the US right now is in a position, and has been for quite a few years, where it is not cohesive at all. And it is in a state of a very, very differing opinions, and they're quite polar opposites. And I would say that the US is partially, and before you start telling me I'm a conspiracy theorist, like, hear me out. US is in a state of a civil war. It's just not the same civil war as we are used to thinking of it. It's not like trenches and fighting and rifles and, like, the Confederacy. It's we live in an era of um we live in an era of internet, and we live in an era of, like, information being available to everyone at the palm of our hand. And there are two very distinct opinions in the US, and they are very polarly opposite, and they clash very, very much. And it's not sort of like, it's always been Democrats versus Republicans, but it's kind of been like most people are sort of in the middle, but choose the party they want to vote for based on, like, what resonates with them most, right? But here it's very different because now they're not in the middle, and both of these parties do not respect each other at all and are incredibly, incredibly opposed to each other. So here's the thing. I think that if something like this had happened in the US, there would be two scenarios. It would either divide the country further, or it would actually serve as something that would unify the country. And there is not really a way to tell. Um, so yeah, but New York, I don't think so, because New York is not necessarily like an identity place, right? New York is a melting pot of a lot of different cultures and a lot of different people. And if New York were to be attacked like that, I feel like lots of people would just go home to where they're from. Um, how have Russophone Ukrainians responded to the war? Greater push for Ukrainian language use in daily life, I suppose. I actually see, this is something that has happened to me for the first time, and I really, really adore that, because someone had said just now Russophone Ukrainians. So, you didn't call them Russian speaking Ukrainians or Russians or like whatever. You called them Russophone Ukrainians, which is very nice. That's a very good way to put it, because a lot of people confuse Russian speaking Ukrainians with Russians. Well, the majority of people who have spoken Russian in their daily life, how did they react to the invasion? We're all getting bombed equally as much. It doesn't matter if we speak Ukrainian or Russian, right? Well, not equally as much, because the pre-frontline cities are getting bombed way more often, and the cities further away from the front line, not as much. Also, some cities have better air defense, and some cities have air defense that is not as great. Everyone Every Ukrainian has reacted in the same way, and that is with the desire to protect our identity, our country, and to push Russia out of here because no one had asked Russia to come here and do anything. So there obviously are some people who are having a harder time switching to Ukrainian as their everyday language, and there are people who are having an easier time doing so. For instance, I grew up in Lviv. Um, for instance, I grew up in Lviv, and does Joey have mods? I don't know, Grumpy. And Lviv is a primarily Ukrainian speaking city. However, I grew up in a very untypical for Lviv family setting because my grandmother, as we actually have found out last year, was born in a gulag in Siberia. Well, we knew she was born in Siberia. We just didn't know how the hell her family got there, but they were repressed Ukrainians and Jews who were sent to a gulag. And that's how they ended up where they ended up. And so she and my grandfather both were born in Russia, and they had moved from Russia to Ukraine at a fairly young age. However, they spoke Russian, and they kind of like planted themselves into a very small group of Russian speakers in Lviv. So growing up, I would be speaking Russian to my mom and Ukrainian to my father. However, Ukrainian is my primary language because I would be speaking it at school with my friends in my everyday life. It was just sort of like my family cocoon, right? Um, my mom, a person that I have spoken Russian to my entire life, has switched to Ukrainian with me and with most people. And to be fair, for the first like month or two, it was very weird because I don't picture my mom as someone who speaks Ukrainian because it's like a dissonance. It's a cognitive dissonance. But the more we did that, the more natural it became. I don't have to think about speaking Ukrainian to my mother anymore. We just do. I speak Ukrainian to my grandpa. I speak Ukrainian to everyone. I legitimately have completely cut out Russian from my existence. There are obviously certain words that crawl up sometimes if I forget a word because, hey, let's face it, I speak English on a daily basis. I think in English. And at this point, it's like really, really, really freaking hard for me to have so many languages in my head and like be able to navigate all of them. And generally, when I speak at this point in my existence, I translate things in my head from English into Ukrainian, and so sometimes I just forget words. But in general, I speak Ukrainian. I do not speak Russian. In fact, I caught myself. This is. I know that this is kind of a long story, but this does answer your question about Russophone Ukrainians because I am partially a Russian speaking. I used to be a Russian speaking Ukrainian, and I am also a Ukrainian, primarily Ukrainian speaking Ukrainian. I mean, my family is different, and my family is not typical for where I'm from because most people don't have Russian in their families at all because Lviv is a very, very, very Ukrainian region. Ukrainian speaking region. But yeah, so I think a month ago, I met my grandma's business partner, and first of all, I found out he's half Buryat, and he is also Russian. He's moved to Ukraine when he was a child as well. I have never in my life heard him speak Ukrainian. Like, I did not even think that man knows Ukrainian, to be honest. And I've genuinely never in my life heard him speak a word of Ukrainian. So I haven't seen him in 13 years, and we ran into him at a cafe, and we sat down to catch up. And because I literally thought he doesn't know Ukrainian, I was trying my best for the first time in 2 years to like try and speak to him in Russian. And it was so incredibly hard for me that at some point, like I think 2 minutes into it, he looked at me and in perfect Ukrainian said, "Yulia, just speak Ukrainian." And I thought first of all, it was a shock for me because I didn't know he spoke Ukrainian. And he also spoke Ukrainian with like the outmost Lviv accent I have ever heard, like perfect Ukrainian. And I also, it was interesting because he saw me struggle to express myself so much that he was just like, dude, just speak whatever is comfortable for you. Which, I mean, hey, I could speak English, but he wouldn't understand me. So so yeah, so that's sort of like that's sort of a also, I guess, answers your question, because this man has lived in Lviv his whole life and he has never had to use Ukrainian, even in Lviv. And he's now speaking Ukrainian, which is quite fascinating and very interesting to me. Has there been a greater push to use Ukrainian in daily life? Yes, there has been a greater push, and there should be an even greater push. And that push should have started in 1991. Because had that happened in 1991 and we actually completely cut out Russian from our daily use, and we had cut out Russian TV and we wouldn't teach our children Russian, then these kids would not have grown up on Russian TV shows. They wouldn't have grown up with Russian news information and stuff like that. And they would not be, people wouldn't be brainwashed. People would not have the inferiority complex that had been consistently imposed onto us through Russian TV. It's like, I don't know how much Joey has told you, and I'm assuming it's not nearly as like comprehensively deep in terms of Ukrainian identity, simply because Joey is not Ukrainian, although he's fantastic in doing the news like that. I'm not trying to just disparage him in any way. But what I am trying to say is that, like I guess like my audience is very familiar with what it's like to have been Ukrainian in the past 30 years. Since independence. I was born 3 years post-independence, so I've practically lived through most of it. So yeah, so we grew up watching Russian television. Most of our shows have been in Russian, because we didn't have like an ability to produce as much television as Russia did. And so Russian TV shows were not just like funny, they were not just random TV shows, they were not just made for entertainment, they were propaganda, right? Because in a lot of cases, these TV shows, anytime they would have a Ukrainian character in them, they would, even if that character was from Kharkiv, which is like a huge city, or Kyiv, or Donetsk, or Mariupol, or anything, this person would be portrayed literally as a redneck, like a redneck who had just come to like bumblefuck nowhere, Russia. And they're like, wow, civilization. And these characters would also always be portrayed as like super loud, and they're like really tacky, and they don't know anything. They speak this like very rural version of Russian. Everyone is like making fun of their pronunciation and stuff like that. So it's, these little microaggressions and these little things that would make you feel inferior to Russia were inserted into absolutely every aspect of our life. We had books in Russian. All of our movies in movie theaters were just with Russian dubbing, and Russian dubbing is never real. Russian dubbing always portrays a very different picture. For instance, there are examples of movies where someone in an American movie would say like, oh yeah, I mean, of course they're like thieves and like whatever, they're Russian, right? And then in Russian dubbing in a movie theater, it would be aired as, oh yeah, of course they're thieves, they're Ukrainian. So Russia has been doing this entire campaign to sort of devalue Ukraine and make Ukrainians feel like we are inferior, like we are not worth anything, like we are just sort of like these like not quite Russian, garbage little leftovers. It was built since before 2000s, but it really came into fruition starting with Putin's presidency. And it really started manifesting itself everywhere in early 2000s. And so it seems dehumanizing. It is dehumanizing. It is very dehumanizing. I mean, this is sort of like what we've lived with our entire existence. So yeah, it is, the push for speaking Ukrainian and the push for eliminating Russian it's not some sort of like nationalistic behavior. It's because that can ensure that our kids are not, our kids and our grandkids are not going to be in this situation that we are in again, because this has happened every generation. Every generation we've had this. And it's just like it's abominable. And if kids learn Ukrainian, and if they grow up with just Ukrainian and English and German and French and like whatever, but without Russian, because Russia's goal is to eliminate us, they will not be able to watch these fucking TV shows that make them feel like they're inferior. They're not going to be able to watch these stupid news streams that are going to be telling them that Ukraine is garbage and they have no future. They're not going to be able to, like, watch dumbass movies that portray them as rednecks that are not worthy of anything, because I grew up with this shit. I did. And before I get to the news, I will tell you one Привет. I will tell you one more thing. So as I said, I used to speak Russian to my mom and Ukrainian to my dad. The reason why I switch between English and Ukrainian so easily is because it was not just like speaking two languages at home. It was literally like, it would be me in the kitchen, my mom to my left and my dad to my right. They would be both speaking to me, and I would be turning one way and speaking Ukrainian and turning the other way and speaking Russian. So I would constantly switch languages. Because my grandfather is a professor at a university, and because he had moved from Russia, his Russian is very Russian. As you might have heard, Ukrainian Russian is very different from like Russian Russian. We pronounce things very differently. We use h instead of g. So usually when a Ukrainian speaks Russian, you can tell that they're from Ukraine, not from Russia. Our intonation is different. Our way of pronunciation is different. Like, we use words that Russians don't use. It's like it's its own dialect, pretty much. I speak a very like, I used to, I don't speak Russian anymore, but I used to speak like a very academic St. Petersburg type of Russian, neutral Russian, right? So most of the times when I would meet Russian people, they would have no idea that I'm from Ukraine. So where I'm going with this is, I went to school in Lviv, which is what you must have heard of as like the core and center of nationalism in Ukraine, which, like, yes, Lviv is a Ukrainian-speaking city, and we grew up with a lot more Ukrainian tradition, exposure to Ukrainian culture and Ukrainian language and Ukrainian TV shows and Ukrainian, like authors and stuff like that, because we were just much farther from Russia and it was much harder to impose this shit on us. But when I was in high school, we had this literature teacher. So we had Ukrainian literature as a subject, and we had world literature as a subject. And in our world lit class, we were learning Russian writers, the Pushkins and Yesenins and whatnot. And at some point, we were learning Russian poems, just like we did from everyone else. At some point, we were learning Guillaume Apollinaire, who's French. And when we were learning French authors, we only had one option of memorizing these poems and reciting them for a grade, and it was in Ukrainian. So it's Ukrainian translation. When it came to Russian writers, we had two options. We could memorize the poem in Ukrainian and recite it in Ukrainian, but then we would only have like a grade maximum of, like, let's say A, right? If we memorized and recited it in the language of the original, which would be Russian, our grade maximum would be A+. So we would get like extra credit for that. However, my world lit teacher, I don't remember, she was either like a Russian immigrant who moved to Ukraine, or maybe her parents were Russian and she like grew up in an incredibly Russian family. But so she told us that the only way that we could recite these poems in Russian for extra credit is if we had perfect Russian pronunciation, because she absolutely hates it when people speak Russian with this like Ukrainian accent. And see, at that point in my life, I knew that I speak perfect Russian. And and out of my entire class of Ukrainian children who have no fucking reason to have no accent in Russian or even know it, me and this other kid were the only kids who actually could accomplish that. Well, he had no interest in studying in general, so he had no interest in studying in general, so he didn't memorize the poem. I did. I was the only person in the entire class who did. And I recited the poem and I got the extra credit. And obviously, she was sitting there just listening to me and she was, owing and, she was so delighted by my pronunciation. I got a really good grade. I came home and I told my mom, and I was so proud of myself. It was in Lviv. I was so proud of myself because I knew that I was better than all of those kids, right? And I knew how to speak Russian the same way as Russians do, which made me superior. Okay. And I fucking hate this. And I can't believe that teachers in Ukraine were allowed to pull that shit. I'm so happy that my dad heard that conversation and like brought me back down to earth immediately and explained to me, all the reasons for which I'm not superior to anyone and what the fuck is wrong with me to begin with. And there's nothing wrong with the kids in class who can't do that because they're Ukrainian and they have no business knowing Russian like it's their native language, because it isn't. And that no one should be decreasing grades for kids because they don't know how to recite a poem in perfect Russian. Because here is the thing. So if we had the option of reciting the poem in Russian and we had to do it without a Ukrainian accent, right? Why didn't we have the option to recite the poem in French when it was French? And would she care if our French pronunciation wasn't perfect? She wouldn't, right? And that's the thing. It is abominable, like genuinely abominable, that was happening in Ukraine. That a teacher had the ability and opportunity to encourage kids to feel superior to their peers for knowing Russian and speaking it well, right? It is horrifying. And looking back at it, I wish that my parents went to the school and complained about it. I wish that people around me had seen the problem with it. I wish that my family had seen the problem with it instead of being proud of me for getting a good grade. And it's just like, looking back at it, it is so incredibly hurtful. And it shows you exactly how deep the Russian superiority was running in Ukraine and Ukrainian society, and how much we were taught to want to be more Russian, to want to pass for Russians, to want to strive to be, better Russian. And it's horrifying to me that at some point I fell for it. And this wasn't in Donetsk, this wasn't in Luhansk, this wasn't in Zaporizhia, this wasn't in cities that are closer to Russia, where the Russian influence was far more widespread. This was in Lviv, where everyone abroad for some reason is convinced that none of this was happening because we're crazy gung-ho nationalists who are just like, Bandera followers. But that's not the case. This has been running so deep and it's been so widespread, and Russia had inserted its claws so far into our culture that this was happening all over Ukraine, whether it be in a Ukrainian speaking city or in a Russian speaking city. Russian propaganda had taken over our existence in absolutely every aspect of it since our independence. And that's that. Someone says it was the Soviet Union. No, it was not the Soviet Union. It was independent Ukraine. I was in high school in independent Ukraine. I feel like, I'm sure, I haven't done my nightly skincare routine yet, but do I fucking look like I could have been in high school in Soviet Union? I mean, if I do, I am going to be soliciting donations for like, for a better skincare routine because, sweetheart, I'm turning 30 in a couple of months, and that's scary enough. Let us not give me a midlife crisis quite yet, okay? It was not the Soviet Union. Glasses always ages a person. No, I did like, dude, for me to have been in high school in the Soviet Union, I would have to be like 50. If you think my glasses make me look anywhere close to 50, Jesus freaking Christ, dude. Like, I have a lot more problems than I thought I did. But anyways, also, I'm being very, very sarcastic. You guys who are Joey's viewers, you don't know me yet, so you might think that that this somehow made me upset or something, or it influenced me. But no, I'm just a very sarcastic person, and I really like, anyways, I guess you'll get it. Also, much ADHD, quite neurodivergent, just for future reference. Alrighty, so we're gonna get to the news because it's time to get to the news, I suppose. 48, no older. Oh my God. No, I don't think 50 is old, but it's just like, I'm not anywhere near 50. I'm 21 years away from being 50. I don't even know how I got here. It's my first live here. Hi, welcome. My name is Yulia. This is Joey's account. I'm substituting for Joey while, no, I'm not Joey. I'm substituting for Joey while he's on a vacation because he asked me to. And of course, I'll do it because why not? I also have my own account, and I'm currently live streaming this on YouTube, on Joey's TikTok, and on my own TikTok because I do live streams with Ukrainian news. With Ukrainian news every evening anyway, and I figured I might as well, just add another account to it, because why not? Is 55 old? Just asking for no reason. No, it isn't. I saw you on I saw you on John Aravosis's live one time. Yes, John is a good friend of mine. I adore him. He's fantastic. Доброї ночі вам. Вам також і тихої. If glasses make you look older, I must look 35, so you're running 3 lives at once. Yeah, I am running 3 lives at once. Well, technically 2, because 2 of my own, just 1 live, and 1 of Joey's. Also, on YouTube, we have Armin, and for those of you who are new here, every night that Armin watches the live, he sends us a quote of the day, because he is literally Armin the quote guy. So his quote is up, and I'm going to read it. In America, the president reigns for 4 years, and journalism governs forever and ever. Oscar Wilde. Such words are now true, if not only in the US, but of the whole world. Of not only the US, but the whole world. Journalism is king. Yeah, journalism is king. Journalism really decides your perspective, and depending on what source you believe and what sources you're used to, that's what's going to form your opinion. No wonder Joey is a happy lad. He's done well. He did in fact do very well with his wife, whose name is the same as mine. Her name is Yulia, but she goes by Julia, and they're on a vacation together. I am a friend of the Contino family. I just happen to be Ukrainian and a journalist as well. So I am taking over Joey's live while he's away. Shame that so much is owned by the Murdochs. Yeah, the Murdochs are bad, but also shame that so much is owned by Putin. And like, quite literally, his influence goes so far. Well, Russia's influence goes so far that they... Привіт! Я також в Києві. That unfortunately, they even own publications in like India and other countries. In fact, for those of you that haven't heard of this yet, I'm going to suggest that you go to my YouTube, and in my community tab, you can, hi Talon, you can find a post that I had recently posted. And it's an interview of a former KGB agent, and it's not like a modern Russian person because I would not advise you to listen to Russian people at all. But this one is a KGB defector, and he defected in the 70s. And this interview, I believe, was done in the 80s, and he talks about the tactics that he was taught in the KGB of how to destabilize the world. And he literally walks you step by step. Привет, Kharkiv. Step by step over like what Russia's strategy is in destroying the US, and that is the plan in destroying the West. And people discounted it because it didn't happen for a year, for 2, for 3, for 5, right? But it was a very long haul plan. Now, Putin is a KGB trained person. He was a KGB agent, and he was in Berlin when the Soviet Union collapsed, and he was watching it happen, and he was helpless, right? So the strategies that Yuri Bezmenov, the KGB agent, talks about are the same strategies that you can see now. And the things that he's saying are going to happen are literally happening because that is the plan. That is what he was coached and trained for. And then he defected, and then he did an interview and talked about his experiences, and also about how the Soviet Union was brainwashing Americans, and how, American presidents that were visiting Moscow, how they were taken on a joyride, and they were showed like a very different picture of the Soviet Union than it was. He was talking about like children's labor camps and stuff like that, and how they were disguised as like kindergartens. It's a whole thing. Like, honestly, go to my YouTube. My YouTube is YEWLEEA. That's also my TikTok and literally all of my other social media. If someone's asking for it, Rebecca is a moderator here, and here she is posting my username. And yeah, so it's in my community tab, like the post tab on YouTube, and it's a fantastic interview. I would I'm not telling you to go there to follow me. I'm just telling you to go there to find the interview, because I'm sure that it's going to be hard for a lot of you to find the interview by me just saying, hey, look up the KGB agent named Yuri Bezmenov, because it's a Russian name, and it's going to be hard for a lot of you to just like write it down from hearing it. So yeah. Check it out on YouTube and watch that interview. It's honestly phenomenal. I have been recommending everyone to watch it because it will change the way that you perceive how Russia puts information out there, and it will give you a lot of perspective on a lot of things. Okay, so this time has come. South Korea has announced plans to allocate $2.3 billion in aid to Ukraine starting from 2024, which is big news because, as we know, South Korea tries to stay quite away from really, engaging in any conflicts or situations, especially with, North Korea's partners, because they don't want to escalate. The fact that South Korea is announcing a $2.3 billion package of aid to Ukraine starting from 2024 is a huge deal, because that means that they're not scared of North Korea. They're not scared of Russia, and they're putting their foot forward there, saying that they do support Ukraine. It's a big deal. It might not seem like a big deal, but it is a big deal, because if we think about it in terms of geopolitics, that is quite a we don't care what you will do, North Korea type of move. Additionally, South Korea will provide $12 million through the NATO fund to support the operation of rehabilitation centers for wounded Ukrainian military personnel. While South Korea does not supply Ukraine with weapons and ammunition, it offers humanitarian and financial assistance. Cho Tae-yul, the head of Ministry of Foreign Affairs of South Korea, also expresses concerns about North Korea supplying weapons to Russia in violation of UN resolutions, emphasizing the potential threat this poses to the Korean Peninsula and the global non-proliferation regime. Yeah, it's humanitarian. Yeah, it's humanitarian aid, Holret. According to an Ipsos, this was interesting, but also kind of like, hi, Mr. G. This was interesting, but also, When does Ukraine sign with NATO? I seen a general say yesterday that they would. No, I mean, so everyone is in agreement that Ukraine will be in NATO, but when, it's kind of like, oh, when the war is over, we'll talk about it. For now, we'll just negotiate. So no, it's not going to be anytime soon. Yulia, is there any news about F-16s? Yes. So here's the thing. For those of you who like you don't know my background, and I kind of like went over my background, but there are certain questions that I will, oh, hi, Aaron, that I will not be answering because I know a little too much background information that could kind of skew my opinion, and I can give out too much that I am not supposed to because OPSEC. So yes, there are news about F-16s, but I think that for the next month or so, it's worth it to not talk about F-16s, or rather not ask your like favorite journalists or anything like that, because a lot of it is going to be speculation. And there is very good reason to believe that there is no information about F-16s out there for a reason. So I have friends in quite high up there military leadership in Ukraine, and I'm on the ground in Ukraine, so I do get a lot more. I am privy to a lot more information than I guess a lot of people in the US are, simply by proximity. But also, my grandfather works. He's a civilian, but he works in a he works with the military. My grandfather created he revolutionized, I guess, rewrote the program of physical education or physical training for the Ukrainian Marines for combat. So not combat prep, but physical prep for combat. So due to that, and due to certain connections I have within the military and things like that, I do get information that I can't share quite a bit of times. Quite a bit of the time. And I'm very like careful usually to sort of answer your questions, but also not answer them, because when I do know a little more than I should, I don't know anymore if I am giving you my personal analysis or if I'm giving you a little too much. So here is what I'm going to say. There is quite a bit of info on the F-16s. The reason why we're not hearing about the F-16s, or the reason why they kind of went into the background and the reason why they kind of sort of like disappeared from our information sphere, is because it's purposeful, more likely than not. So I would say, keep your ears and eyes peeled in the next month or so, or maybe two. And there might be some movements happening in unexpected places. And that's all I should say, basically. So that's that. Okay, according to an Ipsos poll for Euronews, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and French President Emmanuel Macron are the most popular European leaders in the European Union, while Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban and Russian President Vladimir Putin are the least liked. Ha! However, despite his popularity in the EU, 62% of Ukrainians have a negative attitude towards Macron. I wonder why. Because, he spent his entire Ukraine invasion participation as like a Putin lackey, and then he's finally turned a page and started, he's entered his Winston Churchill era. And I am liking this new revamp of Macron, and I do believe that it's not just him, it's not just like a phase. I do believe that he's realizing that without the US support, Europe can very well be effed, and that he is trying to convince other European leaders that, hey, this is serious, and we could have been doing what we've been doing and literally kind of dragging our asses this entire time while the US was really on it. But now that they're not, we need to get our shit together. And I do like his approach. But yes, Ukrainians are very, very wary of him. Attitudes towards him are quite, they're quite negative here, but they are changing. We are just not very trusting for reasons, I guess. We might have some reasons to not be, trusting off the bat. I guess that's not surprising in the slightest, but that's what it is. Okay, Czech Minister of Transport Martin Kupka highlighted in the Financial Times that Russia has made thousands of attempts to disrupt the operation of EU railway networks and sabotage critical infrastructure. These attempts to undermine European railways have surged notably following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, with hackers targeting signaling and ticketing systems. For instance, pro-Russian hackers targeted the signaling systems of the Czech railway operator České dráhy, posing serious risks of accidents. Similar attacks were also reported on railways in Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, and Estonia. I mean, I've said this yesterday on last night's stream that it's not uncanny, provided that that Russia has been trying to hack into U.S. banking systems as well, and Russia, not just the EU, but U.S. as well. There have been massive cyber attacks against banking institutions, against colleges, against, educational institutions in general, against stock exchanges, against basically all the infrastructure in the West. And quite a few US banks and quite a few large US companies have had to revolutionize the way that cyber attacks are being repelled in the past 2 years because, they have gotten so frequent and they have gotten so aggressive that the infrastructure that was there before wasn't working anymore. In fact, I know someone who works in cybersecurity, and they were telling me quite a bit about how incredibly draining these past 2 years have been for them because they work for a very large US bank in cybersecurity. Yes, I'm not Joey. Hi. Yes, not Joey. And they have been saying that it's been quite 2 years in terms of cybersecurity. Hungarian Prime Minister Orbán reiterated his belief that the EU should prioritize the accession of Western Balkan countries over the Eastern European nations like Ukraine. Viktor Orbán forgot that he's the Eastern European nation as well. Isn't that lovely? He emphasized that resources should be directed towards completing the accession of the Western Balkans before tackling the much more difficult process of Eastern enlargement, which includes Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia. Orbán's stance underscores Hungary's position on the sequencing of EU enlargement efforts. I do love that. I do love when a leader of the most, literally most corrupt Eastern European country that somehow ended up in the EU and is causing the most problems through blackmail to the European Union and quite literally isn't abiding by any European Union standards and goes against everything that the EU stands, is expressing their uncalled for, unsolicited advice and opinion again. Thanks, Victor. I really appreciate it. Everyone does. Russia-made warships set to join India's navy despite sanctions, says Bloomberg. India will take delivery of 2 Russian-made warships in the next few months as the 2 countries work around U.S. sanctions that created difficulties in paying for Russian weapon systems, according to senior Indian officials. One ship is likely to be handed to the Indians in September, with another being delivered early next year. The delivery of the ships are 2 years behind schedule due to the war in Ukraine. Well, due to the invasion of Ukraine. Hi, Jerry. So, here's the situation. India is not going to steer clear or steer further away from Russia. Unfortunately, India is very dependent on Russia in the defense sector and also if you watch that interview that I suggested for you with Yuri Bezmenov, who is the KGB defector who gave an interview in the 80s and defected in the 70s, he talks about Russia's influence on India and everything that Russia has been doing, even in the Soviet times, to destabilize India. Russian influence in India runs so deep that their relationship is very unlike a level of your average person who is in India. They quite often believe Russian propaganda because, again, they're very, very, very integrated. And on the level of government, India has become so defense dependent from Russia, and now they're getting such good prices that no matter how much they say they're steering away and they're kind of trying to be neutral, it's not going to happen. Also, they're getting very cheap oil right now, and they're just getting, they're kind of getting the best of it because they're Russia's biggest client. So unfortunately, this is just going to keep getting worse. Are you live with Joey? I'm not live with Joey. I'm live instead of Joey because Joey is on a vacation. Hi, my name is Yulia, and I'm Ukrainian, and I'm also a reporter. I also have a TikTok, and normally I'm live on my account every evening, as I am currently. I'm live on Joey's account. I'm live on my own TikTok, and I'm live on my YouTube. So, I figured since Joey asked me to do video updates, and it's going to be me and Masha from Kyiv Independent, because I had asked for both of us to, have the honors, because Masha is awesome, and you will meet her tomorrow, because we're going to Free Azov rally from captivity, or Free Azovstal Defenders rally, and we are going to be making a video out of it and bringing you an update. And so that's what we're going to be doing. And we're going to be, do I have a podcast? I do, but it's on pause. And it's been on pause for quite a bit because I've moved to Ukraine and my life kind of went a little bit upside down. And that's what's happened. But I do have a YouTube, and, you can watch me there, and you can listen to all of my previous episodes of the podcast there. Okay, 6 people were killed in a night strike in Kharkiv as Shaheds targeted residential buildings. Additionally, another 10 residents of the city sustained injuries in the strike. The attack resulted in damage to at least 9 high-rise buildings, 3 dormitories, several administrative buildings, a shop, a gas station, a service station, and cars. Kharkiv can't catch a break. A lot of Ukrainian cities are being attacked every day. That includes Odessa, that includes Zaporizhia. We have seen horrendous things coming out of Zaporizhia in the past couple of days, Dnipro. But Kharkiv gets shelled so much. It gets shelled every day, multiple times a day. People are so used to Kharkiv being shelled that they're not even paying attention to it anymore. Again, one thing that Joey might have not mentioned, because I guess you don't really think about it until you get to Ukraine, right, is that, for instance, I'm in Kyiv. For me, before a Russian airstrike happens, I check Telegram channels that monitor Russian aviation and Russian launches and stuff like that. So basically, between the time that I need to be in a bomb shelter and me finding out that there might be cruise missiles heading my way, I have about an hour or 2 hours. Okay, normally, if there are cruise missiles heading towards Kyiv, I will know an hour ahead of time, and it'll say something like, Russian cruise missiles are crossing into the airspace of Ukraine in about an hour, because they were launched from somewhere far, far away in Russia. Привет, Zaporizhia. But Zaporizhia and Kharkiv, they don't get that. Because usually if cruise missiles or ballistics or even Shaheds are launched, you hear an explosion first, and then an air raid goes off. Because Kharkiv is 30 kilometers from the Russian border. And between a launch of Russian artillery, Russian drones, Russian missiles, Russian anything. And it hitting in Kharkiv, there is about a minute or two. So you go to the bomb shelter after something had exploded very close to you. So when we talk about, life in different cities in Ukraine, it is very different, even though we are all living under the same Russian attack, right? But Kharkiv feels it very different than, for instance, Zaporizhia or Kyiv. Zaporizhia is close to the line of contact. Line of contact is zero line of on the battlefield. Zaporizhia is 30 kilometers away from the front line, and airstrikes in Zaporizhia are much more frequent as well. For instance, I was there in September or October, and something literally hit Zaporizhia, like an airstrike, a missile hit, and like the ground was shaking. Okay, and I looked at the waitress in our little cafe where we were eating borscht, and she didn't even flinch, and she was like, "Oh yeah, something hit." So it's become so routine that people are not even like fazed by it anymore. And it's insane to comprehend that people live under constant missile fire, and they're so used to it that they don't even flinch when something hits. And that's what genuinely that was the atmosphere in Zaporizhia, and it was like horrifying. I can't even imagine what it's like in Kharkiv. Well, I mean, I can. My friends from Kharkiv tell me about it all the time, but at the same time, like, you really, you can sympathize, but you can't empathize. Hi, Canada, because it's truly horrifying, and it's really, really heartbreaking. And that happens to Kharkiv not even every day. It happens to Kharkiv every couple of hours. And today was, just another day in Kharkiv being incessantly and indiscriminately shelled by Russia. Russia shelled Ukrainian territory approximately 30,000 times in the past 3 months, Ministry of Internal Affairs of Ukraine reported. For comparison, last year there were around 66,000 attacks on the territory of Ukraine, said Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs Alexei Sergeyev during a meeting at the Bavarian State Parliament. According to his statement, the enemy is using mostly guided aerial bombs and attack drones. The Russians are attacking civilian and critical infrastructure facilities. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, 217,000 objects have been damaged. The police have already documented 116,000 war crimes committed by the Russian occupiers. 30,000 times in 3 months. In the last year, Russia had attacked Ukraine 66,000 times in 12 months. So in 3 months, we're already halfway through Russia's cumulative airstrikes last year. What do you think of Ukrainians who choose to still speak Russian outside and public spaces? I mean, you can speak whatever you want at home. I don't think you should be teaching your children Russian because, for instance, I was just talking about it in the beginning of the live. I think you're Ukrainian. I used to speak Russian with half of my family. I grew up in Lviv, so I grew up in a Ukrainian-speaking environment. Ukrainian is my first language. It is my primary language. It is my dominant language, but I gave up Russian completely, even with my grandparents who are elderly. And you know what? Like, it's not easy for them, but they do it. My mom gave up Russian, and she now speaks Russian in extreme cases when she absolutely spaces. She only speaks Russian, honestly, when she's angry, because that's that's the first thing that pops into her head, because that's her language that she's been speaking. For during her entire life, but she does her best, and she speaks Ukrainian everywhere except for when she's angry. So yeah, my mom gets when she gets into an argument with someone, she literally just screams at them in Russian. And you know what? I'm okay with that, because the association is that anytime you're angry or anytime you're cursing or anytime something bad is happening, that's when Russian comes out, which cool. I think you can speak whatever you want at home. I think it's important not to I think it's important not to teach your kids Russian, because then your kids are going to grow up in the Russian infosphere, and we know what that is. That is an infosphere in which Ukrainians are inferior, in which we are rednecks who, come from Kharkiv or Donetsk to some bumblefuck Russia, and we're like, oh my god, civilization, because Papины дочки and all of this garbage, right? So I think it's important to not teach our future generations to speak Russian, which is why it's important to speak Ukrainian with your family. Like, if you don't have kids, then do whatever you want, I guess. Just don't listen to Russian music or Russian news, because, well, one brainwashes you and the other one pays for the war in taxes. So I do think that we do need to switch to Ukrainian. I understand that people who have lived, who are from Donetsk or Kharkiv or like Zaporizhia or any other Russian-speaking city, have a harder time seamlessly switching to Ukrainian, but I do think that the effort is worth it. Am I going to be like, you suck if you find it hard to switch to Ukrainian? No. Am I going to be like, you suck if you're like, oh, what's the difference? Oh, fuck yeah. But if you're trying, but you're having a hard time and stuff like that, then sure. But if you're not even trying and you don't see the point, then, well, I don't know what to tell you. That's my opinion. French President Emmanuel Macron described Russia's tone as strange and threatening following a rare phone conversation between the defense ministries of both countries, their first contact since 2022, as reported by Agence France Presse, or Presse. According to the French military ministry, French Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu reached out to his Russian counterpart, Sergei Shoigu, on Wednesday, expressing Paris's readiness to enhance the exchange of information in combating terrorism. Fantastic. Why would they exchange information with terrorists to combat terrorism? I get it. They're referring to Crocus, and that was, if you... I'm not going to get into that right now, but if you are from Joey, then I do have all of my lives saved on YouTube, and you can. What did you do to him? I ate him for breakfast. No, he's on a vacation, and I'm substituting for him because he asked me to. But so if you want to find out more about Crocus and what happened there, like the Russian, mall attack, then that video is on my YouTube. I'm not going to get into that again, because do you have your own channel? Yes, I do. There is Rebecca's posting it. Rebecca's is actually one of my mods, who's also modding for Joey today. But yes, I'm on YouTube. I'm on TikTok. I do news lives practically every night. Sometimes I take a night off, but for a year and a half, I was quite literally doing it every night. But yes, so it's quite funny that France was like, oh yes, let's exchange information about terrorism. Iran warned Russia, the US warned Russia. They did not care because they allowed it to happen, and they wanted it to happen because that's Russia's strategy. Anyways, in response, Russia expressed hope that French special services were not involved in the recent attack on the Crocus City Hall concert hall in the suburbs of Moscow, stated the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation. Why would they be involved? Following the claim of responsibility by the Islamic State extremists for the attack, the comments from the Russian side appeared strange and threatening. Thank you, Janae. France maintains communication with Russia as Paris possesses valuable information regarding the origin and organization of the attack, which claimed at least 144 lives. However, it is absurd to suggest French or Ukrainian involvement. Such claims are baseless and constitute a manipulation of information, which is part of Russia's arsenal of warfare, Macron emphasized. In Kharkiv, despite ongoing shelling and blackouts, over 1 million residents continue to stay, according to the mayor of Kharkiv, Terehov. Actually, I want to suggest a book for you. It's it's a comic book. Like it's designed as a comic book, and it's called. I will tell you what it's called. Okay. I did post the book on my YouTube community tab as well. So if you want to check there, you're welcome to. But it's called Blackout: Chronicles of Our Life During Russia's War Against Ukraine. And it is a fantastic book. I'm not Joey's wife. No, 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 no. Slava Ukraini, Heroyam Slava. Yes. Joey has a wife. Her name is her name is Julia. She's fantastic. She's also Ukrainian. Um, she's also Ukrainian, and she is great. She is on a vacation with Joey. I am a friend of the family, also Ukrainian, also a reporter, and therefore I am here subbing for Joey because Joey asked me to. Oh my gosh, the amount of times I'm going to have to tell people that I'm not Joey's wife, I guess, is going to be hilarious today. Okay, so, yeah. Not Joey's wife. Joey has a fantastic wife, not me. Okay, so Blackout: Chronicles of Our Life During Russia's War Against Ukraine. There have been a lot of blackouts, especially last year, and and this phenomenal book has been made in Ukraine. And when I first, oh, you know what? I have it in Ukrainian, so I'll show it to you. But you can get it in English now, which is fantastic. Also, there is Dmytro Kuleba, Ukraine's foreign affairs minister. He wrote a book that was until last month also only available in Ukrainian, and now it's available in English too. And it's a book about informational warfare and propaganda and how to understand it. And it's a really great book. And both of these books are posted on my YouTube community tab. And because I prefer to read things in English, I'm really upset that I bought this book before the English version came out last week, and I got this book 2 weeks ago. And I got Kuleba's book, a couple of months ago, and it was not available in English. And I kept telling you about it and being like, I'm so sad that it's not available in English. Well, it's now available in English. Go get it. So this book is called Blackout, and it's a chronicle of what people were doing during blackouts in various different cities, and it's done in a style of a comic book. So it's really great. So if you want to show people, what life in Ukraine is like, this is a great way to do it. It's also a great way for everyone to sort of see what life is like. And it's done in a it's done in a, in this format that is not just reading. It's interactive, sort of, so it's different. And I really do recommend you get this book. I wish I had it in freaking English, but oh well. Also because it's easier for me to demonstrate things to you when they're in English. Also, let me take a sip of my favorite kombucha that tastes like a Coke, but with probiotic, good for you, and not nearly as sweet. And here is a tradition that we now have on my channel. When I lived in the US, I absolutely hated kombucha because it's all very highly carbonated. But in Ukraine, drinks that are carbonated, they say lightly carbonated, medium carbonated, highly carbonated. So this one is lightly carbonated. And I've started liking kombucha because here, most of them are lightly carbonated and they just kind of taste like carbonated juice water. So anyways, every evening I show you the kombucha I'm drinking tonight. So tonight it's Spraha, which means thirst. It's my favorite kombucha, and the flavor is Coca-Cola. Oh, brilliant. You're selling that bullshit too. I'm not selling you anything because unless you're in Ukraine and you can go to my local supermarket, you're not going to be able to freaking buy it. So, no, I'm not selling you kombucha, babe. However, maybe those probiotics can, I don't know, elevate your spirits and elevate your sense of self-worthiness, and you might stop commenting negative shit on people's lives for no fucking reason. Yeah, you might want to try that. I really feel sad for people that are so miserable with their lives that they feel like commenting that. But anyways, speaking to Bild, the mayor of Kharkiv highlighted that prior to the conflict, Kharkiv was home to over 1.4 million people, with an additional 2 million residing in the suburbs. Despite the relentless shelling, it appears that significant numbers of residents have not fled the city. The Russians destroyed all of our power plants and transformers on March 22nd. We were left without electricity entirely. Even the thermal power plant, which supplies Kharkiv with electricity, was not spared. While we managed to restore some power, it's not at the level it was before March 22nd. The situation is extremely challenging, the mayor explained. He emphasized that despite the adversity, Kharkiv remains and will always be a Ukrainian city. However, urgent measures are needed to defend against missile and drone attacks from Russian forces. So this is, well, what I'm about to show you is a segment for United 24 that I work on. And you might have seen it on U24 Media, but if you might have not known that that's my voice, but that is my voice, and I'm going to show it to you in a minute. I'm just going to have to figure out how to hold two phones because I have Joey's account and my own account, and I'm going to try and figure out how to do this so that both of you guys can see. Sorry. Oh, nope. Not good. Not good. Okay, so maybe here's what we're gonna do. Wait. Here's what we're gonna do. Sorry, guys. I'm just trying my best. Okay, you're gonna quasi see it, so that's okay. All right. Super.
Or aggressors. Want to invade someone but worry about consequences? Pretend you're a defender, not an aggressor. But who's a defender? People, of course, of the People's Republic you've just created. Russia has used this scheme for ages. Ivan the Terrible tried to take Livonia in this way. Paul I created the Septinsular Pseudo-Republic to occupy the Greek islands. The USSR approved that scheme in Ukraine and Finland. Then Russia created the unrecognized Transnistrian Moldovan Republic, Abkhazian and South Ossetian republics, Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republics. Calling it a People's Republic does not mean you have to prioritize people's interests. Just deploy your troops there, set up a propaganda machine, and don't bother recognizing the entity's independence, like Russia did with Transnistria. When you're ready to attack, recognize the fake republics on country's territory and start aggressively defending them. First of all, from progress. And what if they fight back? Oh, that's unfortunate. You might want to prepare for a court-martial and long decades in prison.
Okay, so that's the United 24 segment that I work on, and I guess that was my first. Sort of collaboration with Ukrainian media, and yeah. That's kind of where we're at here. I do really love their segments, and I do love the segment that used to be called Ukraine Briefly, and now it's just called World Briefly, because we do cover a lot more subjects than just Ukraine. How long is he gone for? He's gone for 7 days. He's on a cruise, and I think he really deserves it. Ukraine has proposed banning air transit through the EU for Russians and Belarusians. Our proposal aims to restrict the comfortable use of EU skies by Russian businesses and tourists. We've discussed with our partners the possibility of closing transit for flights to and from Russia, said Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal. Fun fact, Denis Shmyhal actually used to work with my family's really good friends at their bowling club back in the day. And they know him very well, apparently. So yeah. He acknowledged that such a measure would pose logistical challenges for Moscow and cause discomfort for Russians. We will push for these sanctions. I am confident that our partners from Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia will support our initiative. We will collaborate with the European Commission on this matter, added the Ukrainian Prime Minister. Russian analysts have already speculated that if such sanctions are implemented, it could spell the end for the European businesses and potentially escalate the conflict into a third world war. Yeah, everything escalates the conflict into a third world war for Russia. Also, they threaten nuclear strikes literally every week and every other day. So at this point, you know, as Macron has said, we shouldn't fear Russia. Russia should fear us, and he's right. President Zelensky held a meeting with a delegation from the U.S. Congress in Chernihiv region. He highlighted that the representatives from both parties and both houses of Congress were present. I was waiting for you to share what form of the Russian cope would take. Thanks. Zelensky emphasized the importance of the U.S. Congress making a prompt decision regarding further support. Thank you. For Ukraine. He stressed the need for a suitable package to enhance protection against Russian aggression and to support Ukraine's ongoing efforts. Zelensky expressed confidence that such support would significantly strengthen Ukraine and improve the overall situation. NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg anticipates that prior to the alliance's summit in Washington in July, the member states will reach an agreement on establishing a 5-year support fund for Ukraine amounting to $100 billion. Today in Kharkiv, mourners gathered to bid farewell to the rescuers who were killed in the act of Russian aggression. As you might have known, a couple of days ago, there was a huge airstrike on Kharkiv, and Russia used the double tap technique. And what they did is they struck a target, and then when rescuers arrived, they struck again. Rescuers were murdered, and one of these rescuers was a father of a firefighter, and both the father and the son have been working in the first responding services, and it was just very evil. I'm sure you must have seen the video of the firefighter getting to the scene and realizing that his dad is among the killed and crying, and that video has gone viral because it's just so incredibly upsetting and it's so sad. I'm going to show you the video. It's a minute long of the farewell that was done in Kharkiv for the first responders that died as a consequence of Russian aggression. It's really sad, and I wish I didn't have to show you this video, but I do feel like it's important to show how Ukrainian heroes are being paid tribute to. Sorry for potentially causing you to be dizzy on Joey's channel, because I'm trying to set up the camera so that both my TikTok people and Joey's TikTok people can see what's going on. Yeah. So that's how farewell is being paid to first responders in Ukraine. So our sort of first response services, our fire department and our search and rescue and medical and sort of like medics are all in one service. It's called DSNS, and they dispatch from the same entity. So everyone from that entity is present to say goodbye. Ukraine is urgently seeking energy equipment and air defense ammunition to prevent summer blackouts following devastating Russian strikes on its energy infrastructure, reports Bloomberg. The agency highlights that the recent Russian attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure were more maliciously planned than those in the previous fall and winter of 2022-2023. Ukraine suffered a loss of 6 gigawatts of capacity, with 80% of DTEK's capacity damaged, resulting in billions of hryvnias in damage. The destruction has been extensive, affecting both power generation and transmission. The situation is dire. We still do not have a full assessment of the damage, as many facilities are still inaccessible under rubble. We are scouring the globe for the necessary energy equipment, including neighboring countries, to replace what has been lost. However, these efforts may prove futile if Ukraine does not acquire an adequate supply of anti-aircraft weapons, stated Ukrainian Minister of Energy Herman Halushenko. The minister stressed that Russia would be unable to provoke a crisis akin to that of 2022-2023, as Ukraine now has basic generation capabilities covering 30 to 50% of its energy needs, even in the event of substantial damage. Nevertheless, Halushenko warned that Ukraine would be asked to conserve energy during July and August, and the government is exploring various financing options for infrastructure restoration, including the possibility of raising electricity tariffs. The situation today is even more challenging than last year, with significant losses in hydropower and the need for scheduled maintenance of nuclear units, he added. Also, Ukraine is building 2 more units in Khmelnytsky, in the city of Natishin, where there is a nuclear power plant that no one seems to have heard of. And that is what I have for you for today. And that is all. And we are going to reconvene. Wait, sorry, my phone fell. We are going to reconvene tomorrow, and we are going to start with our air defense needs and how that situation is becoming quite dire, unfortunately, as well. Oh my God, they did. That's so sad. Where is my lovely puppy? Cinny is right there snoozing. So if you are new here, hello. This is my dog Cinny. She is she's a lovely little French bulldog. She is also incredibly, she's incredibly tired today because we were at a birthday lunch that grew into dinner, we got there at 3 p.m. and we left at about 10. So it was a long, at 9:30, it was a long day. And Cinny is not having dinner tonight because my mom's best friend, who was at the dinner because it was her daughter's birthday, so my mom's best friend, I grew up across the hallway from them in an apartment. And her daughter, Sasha, is one of my very close friends. We are close in age. And she has another daughter, Lera, who turned 20 today. So she is Sasha's little sister. And last time I saw her, she was 8. 8! And today she was 20. 20! For F's sake. And for me, I could not handle that. So Yana, my mom's best friend, and their mother loves animals, and she's one of those people who's going to feed them under the table. And you will find that out by simply looking at her dogs that are obese. And so today, Cinny had bread, Cinny had cheese, Cinny had lots of things. And Cinny normally is not allowed to eat human food. So she was very happy, but also obviously we're skipping dinner. We're skipping dinner because Cinny is turning into a ball. Come here, Baba. Into a very cute French bulldog ball, but ball nonetheless. This is Sin. She is not happy that I had distracted her from her beauty sleep. But yes, for those of you who have never met Cinny, this is the queen. And she's adorable. Hello, bud. She's literally asleep. Yeah, she is beautiful. Oh, hello. So yeah, that is our doggy mascot of my reporting. Most people are here for Cindy, not for me, and it's okay. I understand them. I'm also in this life for Cindy. I'm her servant, and I'm happy to be one. So yeah. And this is Cindy, completely passed out. Thank you guys for listening to the updates. I will be with you for the next 7 days, and I will also be posting videos on Joey's channel. Hi, Darlene. And yeah, I think it's 2:30 a.m. and I think it's hi Jason and hi Jay. I think it's time for us to go to bed. If you missed the live stream, fret not. It's available on my YouTube. It's going to be saved and you can watch it there. In the meanwhile, if you are on YouTube, please give it a like. And after it's done, could you please leave a comment, because it does help more people discover the streams. And I will be very grateful. And if you are on TikTok and you enjoyed, me taking over Joey for a day, don't follow me on TikTok as well. Alrighty. I will see you guys tomorrow. And now I'm going to disconnect each of the 3 screens I have going. Joey's TikTok, my TikTok, and my YouTube. Sorry for barely answering YouTube comments tonight. I will get better tomorrow. I figured I should prioritize Joey's chat tonight because most people were coming in and being like, "You are not Joey." And it's like, how rude. What if I just got plastic surgery? Okay, but I will see you guys tomorrow, and so nice to meet a lot of you, and also I love all of you, you know that I do. Okay, Sinona. Yes, I get it. I will transport you back to a location you like more. Okay, good night, Bubba. Cindy is like so not having it. All right, good night. See you tomorrow. Let me start here. Then here. Wait, how do I even do this? Here. Oh my gosh. And then here. Bye. Good night, Nini. How about the voice and attitude? Listen, you never know. Bye.